Morning Musings by Melinda. Happy Wednesday. Today is 4/7/2021, which ends up being a number 7 numerologically, and that's about trust and openness. And we have been discussing family dysfunction. And I have said to you before, I am not a psychologist, I am a hypnotherapist, and I am a spiritual life coach. My job is to teach you about the three-legged stool. That would be body, mind, and spirit. And I talk about the spiritual part. But you can't talk about the spiritual part without talking about the other two legs of the stool, because they all, are directly affecting each other. And family dysfunction is part of our karmic profile. What we come into the world to learn, what we come into the world to understand, to process, to ignite us, to excite us, to delight us, to move us into connecting with our higher power and our spirit. The earth plane, third dimensional frequency, is really a plane of existence where there is a lot of duality, meaning shadow and light. And we've been discussing the shadow side of family dysfunction. Yesterday, I talked about addiction. And I wanted to make it clear to you, and perhaps I didn't as I reviewed myself, that addiction can be a disease, but it's a disease of the spirit and mind and body, not just a disease of the addiction part or the addictive self, because the addictive self more or less doesn't allow you to connect to yourself in other ways, especially spiritually. I had a lovely private message from somebody who said she'd been recovered for a very long time, and it wasn't until she addressed her spiritual self that she was able to make that recovery be a recovery that stuck, so to speak. Sometimes people are in a state of recovery and it doesn't quite stick because they're working with just the mind, or they're working with just the psychology, and they're not working with the spiritual aspects of it. So to explain it in simple terms, if you are a child of an alcoholic, your vibration may be that you vibrate out to somebody who is got post-traumatic stress disorder. Or if you are an alcoholic, you might vibrate out to somebody that had an alcoholic in their family background. It's all about a vibrational frequency, an energy frequency, that we are attracted to each other. And speaking of the law of attraction, I'm going to be teaching that with Amanda Chavez, who is a psychotherapist, and we'll be doing that the third Thursday of this month. So if you haven't signed up for that class, please do so, because the law of attraction is very misunderstood. We attract from our subconscious minds. We attract from our karmic profile. We have information that travels through our DNA, through generational patterns, and these are things that we have to learn to understand so that we can process things differently, so we can make movement. So we're not continuing as a whole in collective consciousness to be in the dark ages. In the Bible, it talks about people being possessed by spirits. Well, that's something that New Agers love to talk about, is, fear and evil spirits and possessed by evil spirits and all that baloney. They said that back in the Bible because they didn't understand that mental illness was happening to these people. It's a very archaic idea to think that we are inhabited by an evil spirit. It can be just someone who is in their mind using that as a way or means to not connect to their inner source or self. So I frankly believe in evil people, but not in evil spirits. But let's talk about how families cope with psychiatric problems, okay? And so this is 50 tips to families based on psychiatric article that I did my homework on for you. But again, I want you to think in terms of vibration and frequency of energy, compassion and kindness, but also on detachment. Sometimes people with addictions and or psychiatric illnesses that do not seek the help that they need, you have to learn how to practice detachment. It may not necessarily mean that you have to not have them in your life, although having a narcissist in your life, probably you should totally detach from and not have a relationship. Or a borderline personality disorder. Mental illness has got, all kinds of shades of gray about it, right? And there are certain times that you have to excuse yourself out of the drama forever because that toxic energy is not good for you. But this is about coping with psychiatric problems when you are trying to find that compassion, that kindness, and with the person who also has the issue is trying to find a way to work through it themselves. So it's completely natural to blame yourself for the psychiatric problems of your loved one. That's number one. But most often it's neither rational nor helpful. I find it very interesting, too, that people want to take on that stuff. Kind of makes it all about them instead of the person that's struggling. And that can happen a lot when somebody's struggling with mental illness and the parents make it all about them. And there's no room for the person who's ill to get better with that. Number two, severe mental disorders have multiple and mysterious causes. Family stress, if involved at all, is usually only a minor contributor. More often, family stress results from, rather than causes the individual psychiatric problem. That's when they're talking about an organic issue, something that's not working quite in the brain well. My sister and I were talking yesterday about how the brain works with psychic awareness, and I think it's kind of a kissing cousin to mental illness, to be perfectly honest with you, that there are different parts of the brain that are lit up. And I was lucky in my family that the part of my brain that lit up was the psychic one, and that I didn't have to deal with the other troubles that have faced my family and its dysfunction. Number three, feeling irrationally guilty not only hurts the family, it also reduces the ability to see things clearly and provide the contributions of support that's necessary. If a family member has a psychiatric problem that's only mild and transient, it will likely have little negative impact on the family. You can't tell somebody that's clinically depressed, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you want to see somebody talking to another about clinical depression inside of a family dynamic, please jump on my website, melindavail.com, and watch my son, who is clinically depressed, and I talk about how the depression has affected our family. Psychiatric problems that are severe can create severe and persistent family stress and conflict. You know, the mental health care system here is, in the U.S., but particularly in Arizona, kind of sucks, right? And so it's very hard. I've had clients working very diligently, very hard to help kids that may be bipolar with a schizoaffect, you know, hearing voices or out of reality. And it just seems like if you're going to a psychiatric hospital, you have to either be suicidal or homicidal here. And so there's a lot of people that fall through the cracks. I think it's important, if we're going to address body, mind, and spirit, that we address education in all ways, and that we start contributing to education on mental health awareness, which would also contribute to some of the mass shooting crises in this country. Having a family member with a severe or chronic psychiatric or addiction disorder is probably the most challenging stress on any family. Family coping depends not only on the strength and the resilience of its individual members, but how well they work together. And, you know, there is a time and place where adult children have to partner with their parents if there's another adult child that needs some help. Having your child, brother, sister, mother, father, seek help earlier rather than later is important. Do you recognize that sometimes when a woman goes through her change of life, it can cause a psychiatric disorder? Hormonal issues are very real. Be unembarrassed and be honest is part of how this all works. You know, our society really treats people badly with severe mental disorders. It's not that far off from when we used to, throw people away and lock them up because they were mentally ill or they had some kind of a brain problem. So we're not that many generations away from that, and we have to do a better job. And then, make sure that you are not enabling your person that's ill. They have to be able to take some responsibility if they are able to work through the process, to go to a psychiatrist, to go to a counselor and a psychologist, and that kind of support is really important. So, and then, we have to have good clinicians. I unfortunately know of a story where there was a clinician that heard that a person was suicidal and did nothing about it, and the young person ended up completing suicide. Tough stuff. We have to take responsibility and be able to, as healing professionals, risk helping people and losing them as clients. One of my pet peeves about the psychiatric industry is that counselors often support but do not challenge their clients because they're afraid of their bottom line and losing their practice, their money by not challenging. And that's not what it's all about. You know, you have to be challenged in order to get better, for sure. You have to take a good look at that. So if you have somebody with mental illness in your family, I hope that you're doing everything that you can to understand that particular diagnosis, reading up and looking at it, being proactive with your loved one and educating yourself and trying to find the ability to be compassionate and caring without blame, without shame, without embarrassment, and connecting to your own higher power, your own spiritual being, so that you lead as an example with your spirit for those people who are affected by mental illness to connect with their spirit as well. Sometimes those people are the greatest teachers that we have here on the planet, and it's kind of something that you may have designated in your pre-life planning conference, that this soul would be this way in order for your soul to learn a lesson. So remember, Spirit is always talking about how we learn kindness and compassion on this planet and giving to each other. So I let's see, I guess you've taken care of that, Jackie. Okay, I sorry, I got distracted. I saw something on the screen, but Jackie answered for me. So we're all good. So I will look forward to musing for you tomorrow morning. Remember, it's a three-legged stool. You have to treat your body, your mind, and your spirit, understanding energy frequencies, vibrational frequencies, and lessons that your soul has come into this world to learn. Have a great day.